All right, thanks, Kyle. So I want to start off, well, first, thanks everybody for joining us. I think that you will get a lot out of this virtual courtroom presentation, even if you have not had a chance to appear in court virtually. So I'll introduce all the presenters and then I'll kick off this presentation with a pretty general overview about WebEx, and then everybody else will jump in with some more details too. So on this, we have District Court Judge, Judge Sierra is joining us, a County Court Judge, Judge Martin, District Court Civil Magistrate, Magistrate Collins, and then myself, Erika Skufca. And I work in court administration here. I am the Deputy Court Executive, but sort of part of that responsibility is that I've worked on the forefront of these courtroom technology issues. I do local training for our staff here, and I've done something really similar to this, but in person, CLEs before too. So let's get started with WebEx. Again, I'll do a general overview, and then the judges will get into some more details about really exactly what it'll look like and how you can make this work best for you. So what is WebEx? Since we're all using Zoom, it's really similar, it's very comparable. WebEx is just another online video conferencing platform. We're using this to do our virtual courtrooms. So we started this in March. We've been doing it since March, so about for 3 months now. A good thing about WebEx is that it is free, so you can download it, you can play around with it, you can try it with a buddy too, before you have to appear in court for it. So you might be wondering, well, why WebEx? Why are we using WebEx and not Zoom or FaceTime, any other platform? So I think the big answer, overarching answer to pretty much any question these days is because of COVID-19. So that's really what made us make that big switch over. And we're using WebEx because State Judicial already had it. It's a program that they kind of had in their back pocket for quite a while, but just didn't know the right time to introduce it out. Mid-March, that was a perfect time to roll it out when Chief Justice Coates made an order that said that most court appearances had to be virtually. So the Judicial IT department really rolled it out. We all got on board and we've been trying to make it work since then. A nice thing about WebEx is that everything is public too. Just as if you were to walk into the courthouse here, you could go into any courtroom that's having a public hearing. WebEx is the same thing. You can go into any WebEx virtual hearing that is public. So we have a couple of case types that are not public, but other than those rare ones, you certainly can just pop in to any hearing. That's great for participants in the hearing, other parties that want to watch the hearing, perhaps a victim that wants to just stay at home and watch the hearing. All of our information is public, and again, it's open all the time. So to find that, it is on our state court website. So if you just go to www.courts.state.co.us, that's just the Colorado Judicial Branch website. Find Boulder. I like to go to by county and then Boulder. And then right there on our home screen, about halfway down, is the virtual courtroom information. So you can click on either the text or the little icon and it will take you to the next page. So once you click on that, it's going to look like this. So we have it sorted by county court and district court. So this is really helpful because this information and this link will just pop you right into the virtual courtroom. If you don't have a WebEx invitation, I know similarly Kyle sent out the link for this Zoom training. Some of you might be wanting those WebEx invitations for the courtroom, but in case you misplaced it, never got it, you can just go to this website and this will be available all the time for you. So similarly, how you could walk into the Justice Center and just walk into a courtroom, just go ahead, pop in here, and all you need to do then is click on the blue text. So for example, courtroom C/Division 7, you would just click on that and it would open the WebEx room. if a court hearing is not going on, you can still enter it, but nothing will be happening, and it'll probably say that nothing is happening then too. So this is a good website to bookmark. Also part of this page is just a spreadsheet of all the information. So if you click on the text that says for our PDF spreadsheet of all the judicial officers' access codes, you click on that link and it'll open a spreadsheet that looks like this. This is really handy if you just want to print that out or save it on your desktop, something that you have readily available. Super easy. You can just click on all the direct links and all the access codes. This is also helpful because it has the call-in number. WebEx works in a way that you can have the audio up on one device and the video up on another, or just audio, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this access code will give you access to both the audio and the video, so it's a really helpful form. Also, you can pass this along to your client too, so that they have it helpful. That's also another page I'd recommend to bookmark just on the website. There are a couple of hearings that will not be on WebEx, and so those are listed there for you. Those are by the Chief Justice ordered that these still happen in person, and locally all of our judges are also in agreement about those also. So you won't see any of these hearings on WebEx. These will still be in person. So I want to give you just some really general tips on WebEx. The first tip is download it. Even if you don't think, or if you think, I don't need that, I'm not going to have any court hearings in the next couple of months. Hopefully they just all get continued and I never have to think about this again. I would still download it. I would still play with it before the stakes are high and you really have to go to court. So just prepare yourself with that download. And then next, prepare yourself. So play around with it. You can't break it. You know, jump in a really low stakes conversation, you and your office partner, or you and your sister, play around and just familiarize yourself with WebEx. And then also help your client too, and help prepare your client. Do what you can, maybe point them to some different resources, let them know what they can expect, maybe what they'll see, what they'll hear, how they should act too virtually. And then once you're in the hearing, practice patience and practice active listening. This is new to all of us. All of us just started doing virtual court in March. So, you know, we're all learning there with you too. So just make sure that when you are in that hearing, really be patient, really be cognizant of what might be going on around you, different sounds. And I think Judge Sierra will touch on this a little bit later in her presentation too. So WebEx is pretty similar to Zoom with the functionality, but I just want to point out some key things that I think will be really helpful for when you get in there. So once you sign in, you'll see the host controls. So it's on the very bottom, it'll appear on your view. And there's kind of a little screenshot of what it looks like, and then I pulled it out and made it big for what it looks like. So probably I would recommend your best friend in these WebEx meetings is going to be that mute unmute button. The button on the far left with the microphone. That will help you mute your audio and unmute your audio. So I'd recommend to always start with it muted unless you're told to do otherwise. And obviously, if you're speaking, you need to unmute your audio. So that's probably one of the biggest hangups we've seen, is that people don't mute their audio. People do not mute it back, or if they have it unmuted, you hear dog barking, you hear construction noise. Just know where that button is and know how to access it pretty easily. Just traveling along that bar, the next one is to hide your video. So you can decide, okay, I don't need to sit in this hearing, so I'm going to just hide my video, and then once my case is called, I'll show my video so that I do appear. So that next button with the little camera, that one is really helpful too. There's a few other buttons there that I think the other presenters will talk about in a little more detail, so I'm just going to skip all the way to the last one, the X, the leave meeting option. That's what you want to hit to end your meeting. So that one is really important too. Don't accidentally hit that in the middle, because you will hang up on yourself too. All right, like I mentioned, there's a couple of ways you can join WebEx with audio. So one is that you can just use your device that you're using for audio. For example, right now I'm using my laptop. So I'm using my laptop to have the sound come in. So if somebody speaks, I'm using the speakers to have the sound come into my ears. And I'm also using it for the sound out. So I'm speaking and it's just picking it up with the microphone. So I know that my device has both those options. If I were to use a desktop, some desktops do not have speakers in and out. So you have to know your device, know what you need to use. Or maybe you're using your laptop for your sound, but you know your speakers aren't reliable and they're not great. Another option is you can use a phone separately for your audio. So you would call in, you would use that mute button that I mentioned, mute your device that you're using video for, so you can mute your iPad, your laptop, whatever it is, and then use a phone to call in. So you'll also get a call-in number, and I said you have an access code, so you just use that same access code to call in. Also, if you know your desk phone, your office phone, really stable audio, and you're not too sure if that's the same for your laptop, maybe that's a good option. You use your laptop for the video, and then you use your office phone for the audio too. Make sure though that if you're calling in for audio that you mute your laptop, because if you don't, you're going to get this awful feedback and you're probably going to have like a flight or fight experience going on and not really sure which buttons to hit at that time. So just be prepared, maybe try it ahead of time and just make sure things are muted and things are on too. Also with WebEx, similar to Zoom, you'll see that there is a recording feature. So by order of the court, any party, attorney, participants, anybody shall not do any recordings of any kind. So that would be through the WebEx application itself, you could record, or even, you know, we're all creative. We can all think of sneaky ways to do that, right? Like a cell phone over here recording. Make that very clear that there is no recording of any kind, audio, video, nothing. So with that in mind, the court will still make the official court record. Depending on each hearing, we'll either have a court reporter or use an FTR. With that, then, the transcript request is the same as it always is on how you can get a transcript from that. In this picture here is one of our court reporters. This is Allison Lee. You may see her, have seen her in court. In this picture, she's actually court reporting from her office. So the court reporters can join by WebEx and can also make a really fantastic record too. Keep in mind that whether you're having your hearing with a court reporter or with an FTR, eventually there is going to be a human making a transcription of that. So just be really cognizant of making a good record. Again, mute, unmute, practice that active listening. Don't talk over each other because you don't want this poor court reporter to have to make a transcript and take 8 hours for a 1-hour hearing because the record is just all over the place. There's feedback, screeching, that really awful sound. So just keep that in mind that although it's virtually, you might be in your home kitchen with your cat snuggled up on your lap. You know, it's a little more casual than what we're used to, but you are in court, you are making a record, and you have to stay professional too. Also, one of the features in WebEx is different grid views. So I know that Zoom has this feature also. So I just want to point out that it is an option too in WebEx. There are 3 views that you can choose from. There's an active speaker view, there's an active speaker with thumbnail view, and then there's a grid view. That's kind of nicknamed the Brady Bunch view, where you can see everybody on at one time. If you are struggling on that, where to find it in WebEx, it's always in the top right corner, and you have to click on the view and then the options will appear there. They don't show all 3 options at once. You have to hover over it and click on it, and then you'll see all the options there. Again, you can't really break it, so you can play around with it, choose which view you like best. You can toggle back and forth and switch throughout the hearing too, if that's helpful for you. So I want to give you some more resources for WebEx. WebEx is owned by Cisco, so the Cisco WebEx help website is really great, especially if you're getting started. That's a good place to start. And then they also have some really detailed information too. I gave some really general overviews and kind of best practices about WebEx, but if you have more questions or really get into details, that's a really great website too, from the very beginner to kind of the expert too. Also, Cisco has a WebEx tutorial page on YouTube, so they actually walk you through steps on how to set it up. So if you're, again, a very beginner or an expert, check that out for some tips too. And then, again, just play around with it because you can't break it, so I'd recommend really download it, find a buddy, try it out, do some screen sharing, and go from there. So some good resources, the website, YouTube, and then yourself, really. So up next, Magistrate Collins will talk about WebEx in some more detail, and I'll send it off to him.
Thank you, Erika. So I'm Magistrate Collins. I'm assigned to discovery disputes in district court, primarily with civil and DR cases. So let me see if I can share my screen. Erika, I think you have to end sharing screen, or I'm getting an error. There we go. Let's see if I can get it now. All right. A lot of what I have to say is going to be kind of duplicative to what Erika had to say. It's just kind of some more of the nuts and bolts. Hopefully, the repetition is good. I'm also going to talk about some of the issues that we've kind of seen. So to start with, Erika touched on this device hardware. Just make sure that whatever device you're using has either the camera, speakers, and microphone. So most laptops today and or iPads and tablets all have those things. A lot of the desktops don't. I can tell you that none of our desktops here in the courthouse have cameras or microphones. We have speakers. So what happens if you try to join using a device that doesn't have the camera or microphone is you're going to see everybody, you're going to hear everybody, but nobody's going to see or hear you. So, and that's happened already. So just make sure that you have everything that you need. All right. Another issue that has come up is bandwidth. And bandwidth is important in order to ensure that your video is running well at both ends. And really the most important thing that we're looking at is the upload speed. Speed is measured in megabytes per second. And if you Google speed test on a Google, there are lots of free types of speed tests that you can do. This is a common picture of what it looks like. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute, and it's going to test your download speed and your upload speed and tell you where you are. Again, we're recommending a minimum of 10 MPS for upload speed. There have been hearings that have gone on where they've had to stop and reschedule or continue those hearings because the video was so choppy and it was just too challenging in order to continue with the hearing. And it also affects the audio. So where, it's like watching a really bad dubbed movie where there's this massive delay in the audio. So it's a court's expectation that counsel is at a place where they have proper bandwidth and infrastructure there and devices to be able to participate in the hearings, as well as your witnesses and or clients. So that's just an easy way to make sure that you have kind of the minimum capabilities from a hardware and bandwidth point of view. Erika's kind of touched on this. The easiest way to get started in this, I would concur with Eric, you want to download the app. This is what webex.com looks like. You go over, click on, whether you have the download, whether you have Windows or Mac, and install it. It's super quick and easy. And then once it gets installed, the application will often launch upon startup. And using the application itself to navigate in WebEx, I have found to be a lot easier at times. Once you have WebEx installed, you have all the hardware, Again, trying to familiarize yourself. This is, again, on the webex.com. You can see there's a Learn tab that you can click on. Drop-down menus here where you can access all kinds of things, including online classes that are free, as well as the YouTube videos. If you've not used WebEx, but you've used, obviously, anybody who's connected to this hearing today or this meeting is able to do that, you all are very capable then of being able to, come to court via WebEx. But I would agree, and I can tell you that all the judges did practice sessions where we set up practice meetings with one another, where we invited somebody in or we, shared documents and did a bunch of other things. So I would certainly encourage you to do some practice sessions and to familiarize yourself with the tools. Again, kind of just to go over again what Erika touched on, there's two basic ways to enter into a virtual courtroom. And it's really best, I think, to think of it as literally as if you're entering into a courtroom, because that's kind of how it is being perceived. And the two ways, obviously, is you can call in, but the preferred way, and I think the way that most of the judges here, if not all the judges here, would prefer, is that you appear by video. I personally have found, and I know other judges agree, that appearing by video, we're still able to make a meaningful connection with counsel or clients, and it just is a better proceeding, and is even more favorable to in-court proceedings where somebody's wearing a mask. So, so when you can appear by video, the easiest way is what Erika talked about, the 20th Judicial webpage, the virtual court link, and then you just go to the appropriate courtroom and enter in, click on that judge's link. You're going to then be prompted to join the meeting. Again, make sure you're on mute before you join the meeting, but go ahead and click join the meeting. If for whatever reason that link isn't working, or if you received maybe an email that was forwarded to you with a link, sometimes those links don't work. Every courtroom, every judge has a particular access code that that's theirs and is tied to their courtroom. So, for example, Judge Martin in Division 10 has a particular access code. When you open up your WebEx app, there's a space there where you can just simply enter into a meeting, and you just simply type in that access code, hit join meeting, and it will automatically take you there. So if your links aren't working for whatever reason, but you have the access code, you would simply type that in and join the meeting. Lastly, if you're going to appear by audio, if you don't have the capabilities to appear by video, or you're having technical difficulties, again, the call-in number is the same, and that's located on, should be on all the setting notices, as well as the 20th JD website. So that call-in number is always going to be the same. The only thing that's going to change is the access number to get into the courtroom for the particular judge. So Judge Martin's access number is always going to be the same. So anytime you appear in front of Judge Martin, you're going to use that same number. For Judge Archuleta, he's going to have his own. And so you just need to be able to keep track of those. Here's some practice tips. These are issues that have come up over the last couple of months while we've been doing WebEx hearings. You're going to hear this over and over. Make sure your microphone is muted when you're joining the meeting. That it just eliminates a lot of disruption. You also see here I have joined the meeting on time and not too early. A lot of us like to appear early. This is kind of how we're wired. And imagine that you're going to be entering into a courtroom where court may be in session. And it's very likely that when you enter into Judge Martin's courtroom, that he's going to be on the record with another case. And so when you enter and your microphone's not muted and he's in the middle of talking to a client or whatever's going on, everything has to stop until you're quiet or you get muted. And this kind of just rolls into the next point, not to announce yourself when you enter. I haven't had too much of an issue with counsel, but I've had a number of times where pro se clients come in, they enter the meeting and they're like, hey, I'm here for court. And it's obviously very disruptive to whatever hearing's going on. The other one is a practice tip that I think everybody can appreciate. Just because you don't see anyone when you join the meeting doesn't mean people can't see you. And this was, something that happened again here today, just in court for me this morning. When I open up my courtroom, essentially what I do is I start the meeting, but my microphone and my video are muted. And oftentimes a CJA or a law clerk might be hosting at that time. And what they're kind of waiting to do is wait for everybody to appear. And then when I sit down and to go on the record, I unmute my microphone and I turn my camera on. But there's been a number of times where, so you may, join the WebEx meeting and you may not see anybody else. There aren't any other faces, but be assured if your camera's on, there are people who are going to be seeing you and watching you. So just make sure you don't do anything that's too embarrassing there. You heard Erika talk about having multiple devices, or if you call in on your phone and you're using your computer. I would suggest only doing that, no disrespect, Erika, but only doing that if absolutely necessary. If you have more than one device connected per location, so for example, if I have my laptop computer, which I have right now, connected, and maybe my CJA's computer is connected, it can create a lot of feedback or this echo loop. And so really try to minimize that. Also, if you have more than one device connected via the web in particular, it's going to be draining on your bandwidth issues. The easiest solution to this, and what is highly recommended by the court, is to use headphones. The use of headphones does two things. One, it's going to give you much better ability to hear. You can crank that volume as high as you need it. The other thing is a lot of those headphones nowadays have built-in microphones. So we get a nice clear audio at our end as well. Lastly, if for whatever reason you can't connect, there's always the default call-in. And I just had a hearing yesterday. One of the attorneys was trying to connect, and we just had to simply email or say, here, please call in. So there's always that kind of as a standby. Controlling the courtroom. So the judge is really the host of the meeting. In being the host allows them to really kind of control their courtroom much the same way, or in some cases even better than if it was a live courtroom. Again, when you join a meeting, it may not appear that the judge is a host. It may be that their CJA or a law clerk is hosting the meeting. But once the judge takes the bench, the judge will then take over control. What can they do? Well, as you've heard, mute and unmute. So if you have somebody who's really disruptive, you have a bunch of background going on, and somebody's microphone is hot, the judge can mute and unmute everybody. So that's, probably the most commonly used feature that a judge has. One of the other features is the lobby feature. And so if you have a hearing where there might be an evidentiary hearing where witnesses are going to be testifying, your witness may appear, they may appear before they're ready, and they may join the meeting. The judge can simply move them into the lobby. It's a waiting room. It doesn't kick them out of the meeting, so they're not having to rejoin, call back in, or any of that thing. They just get moved over. They can't hear or see anything. They're there until the judge, moves them back in. And so normally where you'll see that utilized the most is in evidentiary hearings with witnesses. A judge can also expel somebody from the courtroom. Obviously, if somebody's disruptive and or for whatever reason unable to conduct the hearing, and maybe it's somebody doesn't know that their video's on and they've left and it's distracting, any of those kind of things. A judge has the ability to expel somebody out of the courtroom, which then obviously prevents them not only from participating, but being able to observe or watch the hearing. Like Zoom, there is a chat feature on WebEx. I believe all of the judges have either disabled it completely, but I think most have allowed chat, but only with the judge only. This is going to protect the integrity of the hearing, obviously. We left the chat feature, I think most of us left the chat feature in place so that people can communicate with the court directly, particularly in situations where there might be a technical issue. And in those situations, I think what you can expect is that a judge gets a message from you, they're going to read that into the record and discuss it then on the record. So don't expect to be able to chat in between each other, but only with the court. Lastly, CJAs are not technical assistants. So there are a lot of resources available. We've given you a bunch of different links here, and WebEx has a bunch of resources available to help learn and understand WebEx and how to utilize it. Again, I want to reiterate, it's really the court's expectation that attorneys are proficient. They know how to use WebEx. They know how to share documents with WebEx, that their witnesses understand how to appear and utilize any function they may need to, as well as their clients. So when you're, if you want practicing, with your clients and or witnesses is a great way, not only to help them learn and make sure that they have the ability to do what they need to do in court, but will also help you kind of get really comfortable with the features. Please do not contact our CJAs for technical assistance. Your first line of action is going to be online and or seek help elsewhere. There is one exception to this rule, and that's obviously if you cannot appear for court and your time is right now and you're having a hard time connecting for whatever reason. Just like if you were stuck in traffic trying to get to court, it is okay and expected that you're going to send an email or call the CJAs and saying, hey, I'm struggling, I can't get in. What do I do? And expect that we'll probably just tell you as a call in, and we can provide you that information as necessary. So, so that concludes my, section here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, I believe JP Martin, Judge Martin's going to take over now and take it from here. So thanks.
I am unmuted. Are you able to see the screen? What screen are you seeing? Mine's gone blank.
The BCBA Virtual CLE.
Okay, thank you. Mine just disappeared.
Oh, Judge Martin, this is Kyle Mayers. If you go to your top right, you should be able to exit full screen, and that should be able to allow you to see your PowerPoint. Or if you use your arrow buttons, that should be able to move your PowerPoint to the next slide. We now see this. Oh, that whatever we just did, we saw the second one.
That's fine. I can't see it, which is a brand new thing.
Gotcha.
Excuse me.
No problem. Again, I think if you go to your top right, it should be able to allow you to exit the full screen for Zoom, and then you should have your desktop back.
It's not doing any of that.
If you'd like, I can turn your share screen off, and then you can try again.
You're welcome to try that. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so now it's off, and now let me restore your ability to share. So you can try again the screen sharing. Okay, and now we can see the BCBA virtual legal screen. Are you able to?
Okay, that's great. I just can't.
Okay.
Okay. See what we can do.
Okay.
All right, if you guys are able to see it, I'll work my way through it. Good afternoon now to everybody. Sorry about that technical delay. The good news is we're using WebEx for the courtrooms, not Zoom like we're using right now. So Semper Paratus. Semper Paratus is a Latin phrase that I'm sure everybody knows. It means always prepared, like all good Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, lawyers are always prepared. And that's why you folks are here, I know, so that you are prepared. And I thought about it, and the thing that occurred to me that all good Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts have to be prepared is they have a rope. So what I thought in preparing today, I thought I would give you a rope to help you be prepared for your virtual court appearances. And if you will forgive my affinity for acronyms, ROPE, of course, is an acronym. And that's what I'm going to cover today, R-O-P-E. My goal is to cover these, in fact, three things. R-O, review the order that the courts issue in each case. P, practice, as you've heard now several times already. We'll talk a little bit about that again. And then lastly, E, get into some details on exhibits. So for about the next 10 minutes, I'm going to cover these things, and doing these things will absolutely help you be more prepared for the virtual court appearances. Let's start with reviewing the orders. So in every case, criminal and civil, every case you have, there will be an order, a general order issued. And I know in county court, we're all using virtually the identical order. I wrote an order that everybody is using, so they will be virtually identical. It's important that you read this order because it covers so much material. The district courts also have orders they'll be issuing, virtual courtroom orders that will be substantially similar to the orders that we're using in county court. Now, the importance of reviewing these orders, besides the obvious, I'll highlight just a couple things. One, these orders contain the login information to get into a virtual courtroom. It's the information you've just heard already just during this presentation now a few times. It's also written down, at least in a brief format, on how to log into the virtual courtroom. Secondly, when you review the order, you'll see there's a section that discusses the basic ground rules for appearing virtually, the decorum rules, things I think Judge Sierra is going to cover briefly at the end here. But again, they're all written down for you in every case. Lastly, importantly, the procedures for virtual hearings are spelled out in the division orders that you'll read. Now, I get questions. I've gotten questions just yesterday, all week. I've been getting questions from folks. For example, do I have to appear for this hearing, Judge? Does my client or do the witnesses have to appear? I just heard it this morning. And of course, it's spelled out in the order. So if you read that order, it'll answer some of these questions that I know everybody has. It'll tell you when you must appear via WebEx, or conversely, when you must appear in person, or when it's optional with waivers and court approval. You, your client, the DA, witnesses, it's all spelled out what appearances require what type of hearing. Review the orders. Next, I want to talk about P, the practice. Practice is the thing everybody has mentioned, and I think I'm mentioning it again because I cannot emphasize how important it is for you to get in, get your feet wet, and try getting into a virtual courtroom and see what you can do. Trust me, even just a few minutes of practice will improve your proficiency dramatically. Practice logging on to the courtroom you're having a hearing in. Practice logging into other courtrooms. You know where to get those links to get there. Do this well ahead of time. 5 minutes before your hearing is not the right time to figure out if you can connect. Try it the day or two before. You can set up your own meetings, as you've heard Erika talk about, and practice with somebody else. You can also do this. You can just log into any of the divisions. You can log into my division's courtroom, virtual courtroom, anytime. There might be a hearing going on. There might not be a hearing going on, but you can test it out anytime you want. I encourage you to do that. The last thing I want to tell you is maybe the most important is this. There's certain things you just need to have a full open courtroom, virtual courtroom to practice. If you have a big hearing coming up and you're going to have remote witnesses, remote exhibits and things like that, and you need a real full practice, contact my division. I will open the virtual courtroom as long as I don't have anything scheduled. I will open the virtual courtroom and just leave it for a period of time for you to log on, and somebody else can log on with you from some other site, and you can see by talking to the other person, you can practice and see how things work out. You can go into my courtroom. You just got to give me a heads up, and I'll open it actually so that you can practice these things as real as we can possibly make it. Practice before the hearing. It'll pay off. The last thing I want to talk about, the E for rope, is exhibits. This is a big one because it's a big change and it requires a little technical proficiency in order to use exhibits remotely via WebEx. Again, with a little practice, you will become proficient pretty quickly. So there's a couple rules that I want to cover with exhibits, and then I'm going to I'll go over a couple little techniques for using exhibits during a hearing. First is this. Prior to any hearing, you're required to e-file all of your exhibits. Prior to the hearing, e-file them. Now, there's some civil hearings we have coming up where it's attorney versus pro se. Pro se person can't quite figure out how to e-file. I've had 2 attorneys already agree to take the pro se opponent's exhibits and e-file them, upload them with their own exhibits. Not necessary, but a great thing to do and greatly appreciated. You know, relatedly, if a pro se person's having trouble and the hearing is approaching, it's certainly an option to simply email them to the CJA so that at least we have an electronic copy prior to the hearing. That's for pro se folks. Mm-hmm. Next, you know, hearings are so tightly compressed right now because they take longer during these virtual appearances that the more you can stipulate, the more you can plan ahead of time, stipulate to the authenticity, the admissibility of these exhibits, it's going to speed things along. I strongly encourage you always, but certainly now, to try to do that as much as possible. And lastly, share content. It's a phrase you just probably heard today, maybe for the first time. There's a way to what we call share content on WebEx. That's what the tab is called. And that is, what that means is it allows you to share your exhibits, the files, in whatever format they are, share them on screen, exactly like I'm doing now, sharing a PowerPoint on screen. You can do that with your exhibits. And I'm going to walk through briefly how to share content, show an exhibit during a hearing. Remember, you have the link to the Cisco website for tutorials and other training that can give you a little more in depth. But if you can master just a couple things I'm going to show you, you're 75% of the way there. So this is a blank meeting screen. This is what a screen would look like if you logged into the meeting on WebEx with nobody there other than maybe me. You'll see down here, Erika showed this to you earlier, you'll see a section with the icons across the bottom. Erika covered muting your microphone, turning on your video, and then this arrow on it is the share content icon. If you click on this share content icon, it will allow you to share content, share your files. I'll tell you, alternatively, if you go to the top of the screen in the meeting, you'll see a share tab with the drop-down menu, and it also says share content. This is a second alternative method of initiating the share content function. Again, you're just showing the files. So if you click on either one of these share contents, the screen you're going to get is this. This is a screen with multiple icons showing different programs that are up and running or available on your computer, available to share. You'll see Word is up and available to share. Adobe would be available if you had it up. PDFs, JPEGs, anything really. PowerPoint would be available to share if you had it up and running. So as an aside, or really just stepping back for a minute, before you show up at a hearing or before you're practicing your hearing, you should open all the exhibits you intend to use, open them on your own computer, and then just minimize them and have them just running minimized on your computer. If you do that, then when you get to this screen, those files will be available. For example, in this case, I had uploaded and opened 3 Microsoft Word files. You say 3 Word files available to share. I hovered over the icon for Microsoft Word with my 3 files listed, and I simply click share. And if I do that, I would be then able to share the Microsoft Word files that I have previously opened. So once you select them, then you can simply scroll through and pick which active file you want of the 3 Word files you want to share. Once you click on that, it will then be visible for everybody to see, just like this PowerPoint is visible for everybody to see. Again, if you practice this, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. Go to Cisco for a little more tutorials if you want instruction. I want to cover, that's my rope for you. I want to cover just a couple brief things, miscellaneous things, I'll call them. Magistrate Collins mentioned the no chat default for all your hearings. That's a selection that the judges are making. The only things I want to add to what he said is this. While you may not chat with anybody, other participants, including your client via chat, you may communicate with your client through other means. You just have to set those up beforehand. You can do that via texting, IM, or whatever you want. Just set it up beforehand and you can communicate that way. I will say this, you may not communicate with your client, and this is obvious, while that person is testifying. Just as if you were in a real courtroom, you can talk with your client, share sticky notes with your client when you're sitting at the table, but while your client's on the stand testifying, there's no communication at all. Relatedly, no witness, nobody testifying during a virtual court appearance may communicate with anybody during their testimony. And that's a hard thing to ensure, but the best thing we can do to ensure that is to administer an oath to anybody who is testifying during a virtual hearing. You will hear an additional oath administered that goes something like this. Do you affirm that you are not communicating with anyone else during the course of your testimony? So you might hear that oath. The last thing I want to talk about, miscellaneous, is simply interpreters. Interpreters having to interpret testimony obviously slows down every proceeding we have. It's an important function, even if it does slow down the hearings. During the virtual hearings that we've had already, I can tell you it slows it down twice as much. So you should plan on that if you have a case that needs an interpreter. If your case is using an interpreter, your hearing has an interpreter, the rules that always apply even more. Speak slowly, speak very clearly, and pause often to allow consecutive interpreting. We'll be using consecutive interpreting for, so far we've used it for almost everything, so you should expect consecutive interpreting requiring you to pause. That's kind of the default lately. I can tell you we can do simultaneous interpreting if the person who is requiring the interpreting is not testifying. However, you must set that up separately through some other conference, bridge conference, or a direct call to the interpreter with your client or whoever needs the interpreter. Lastly, I hope that the little rope I've given you, you're able to use in a positive way. And If you have any questions, I've put up my email and my division phone number. These will be available to you after as well. Please don't hesitate to contact me directly if you have any questions. Thank you.
Excuse me. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to join you for this presentation. I have a few pointers that I'm going to review, and then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions and answers. For those of you who practice in a number of jurisdictions, you likely understand that WebEx is being utilized across the state. And one of the reasons why the State Court Administrator's Office selected it is because of the security measures that it offered over some of the other video platforms that are available. And it also is able to be recorded, as Erika mentioned, on the FTRs. The courtrooms, although we are able to see that there's a feature directly on WebEx, that's not how we are making the record. We are either utilizing the FTR or the court reporters to ensure that there isn't any subsequent modification or any changes being made of the testimony that is offered by the witnesses. There is absolutely every effort being made by judges to ensure that there is a procedural process of every proceeding that is being conducted, and ensure that although we're not able to meet in the courtroom during these times, that the extent that it is possible that all cases are afforded the same measures to present testimony, present the exhibits, have cross-examination. And although there are glitches that occur, we just had one during the course of this presentation, that we are able to move past those and ensure that this remains a proceeding that is taken seriously by clients and lawyers, certainly by judges, and that it is the best form available at present for the resolution of many of the matters that are pending before the court. You have seen from some of the divisions invitations sent out with the type of link that Erika was mentioning, but more often than not, you are seeing the setting notices that present the 9-digit virtual courtroom that is unique to each judge. And other courtrooms across the state will also do offer that information on their judicial website. That is information that you can share with your clients, and when you share the order that Judge Martin referenced, the district court divisions also have that multi-page order that is being sent out in cases where WebEx hearings are taking place. That is an order that you can photocopy for your clients, that in instances where you have other witnesses who are going to be participating, I hope you are sharing copies of that with the witnesses so that they have the detailed information about how to participate most effectively by WebEx at the hearing. It's not very useful if we begin a hearing and then the attorney says, let me send my client the information, or it's very evident that the client has not given very much thought to their participation. Sometimes the opposite is true. The clients have no difficulty connecting to WebEx, and then the attorney spends some frustrating few minutes having some difficulty communicating with the system, and sometimes is not able to connect to the video portion, and ends up only limiting their participation to telephone because they didn't in advance ensure that they had sufficient bandwidth to be able to accommodate telephone as well as video participation, or audio as well as video. And if the proceeding that's at hand is a status conference or a setting session, it's not a problem to just have someone participating by phone. But if it's a contested proceeding, I would not think that you would want to limit yourself to participating by telephone where others are participating by video. We have had proceedings where one party is by video and one party is by telephone. Contested settings, these are 2 pro se cases. In cases where counsel are presenting contested matters before the court's strong preference would be to have both counsel and their clients participate by video to ensure that they're on a comparable playing field and that the court is able to appreciate the presentation of their case somewhat better. And along those lines, it's important to consider the main point of my comments, which is that you should consider the virtual courtroom exactly as you would the physical courtroom. And you would never walk into a darkened courtroom. So when you consider where you're going to be participating from or where your client is going to be participating from, we want to have the best effect to their testimony and to your presentation. And what lighting is available is something that you should consider. If you are sitting in front of a window and the light is behind you, odds are we will not be able to see very much of your face. And to the extent that I sometimes remark that I think that video participation is better than in courtroom participation with a mask on, because in the video I can see people's faces and I'm able to gauge their demeanor somewhat better than when they're in the courtroom but half of their face is covered. If it's darkened, then I'm not able to appreciate that. So I strongly encourage you to give that some thought and also prepare your clients to give some thought to that. Sometimes when you come into the courtroom, there will be another case that the court is considering. You wouldn't come into courtroom I and think that it's a good opportunity to finish your breakfast. And so neither do I appreciate it if you are visually in the virtual courtroom and finish your breakfast. And we have had that happen in more than one courtroom. Just don't do anything in the virtual courtroom that you would not do in the physical courtroom. As we became accustomed to doing during telephone hearings in order to ensure that we were making a good record, it may become very important that all speakers identify themselves and say, this is Ms. Smith speaking. Otherwise, if there is a transcription necessary, that could be tricky. And I did want to mention that if you are a member of the Boulder Bar Association and you do not, wherever you happen to be working from these days, don't have good internet connectivity, the Boulder Bar Association does have great internet, and they are able to make their co-working space available and their conference room available for that purpose. One other point is that you should dress appropriately. Even though you may be working from home, you are still in a courtroom, and that piece remains something that, the quorum aspect, something that you need to take seriously. Judge Martin mentioned that you're going to be muted, and that the judge as host is going to be unmuting you when it's your opportunity to speak. That may happen, but you also may be called upon to unmute yourself. So be familiar with where the mute and unmute button is on your screen so that you're able to do so and don't end up looking like this when it's your time to speak. One common issue that people speak about is that there is echo or feedback during the presentation. We know that the microphone on certain devices is very sensitive and it can pick up noise that is in the background, thus the endorsement of the headset. So if that occurs, make sure that there isn't a second device close to you that may be creating that echo. A second resolution would be to mute yourself, and then for any subsequent participation, then consider the headset. Sometimes people have asked what is the best protocol when they have come into the virtual courtroom and there's another proceeding taking place. You may be, just to prepare you, you may be moved into the lobby or into the waiting room. That's something that we are able to do. So that's a possibility, although it is a public courtroom. And so depending on how long it's going to be, assuming that your presence is not disruptive. If you are muted, then you are likely going to remain. You can turn off your camera, and then when your case is called, just come back on. As far as the future of WebEx and how long it's going to be in use, it's likely something that we're going to continue to see for long into the future, would be my expectation. There are there are very limited exceptions as to the types of cases that WebEx has not been being utilized. But the vast majority of cases in this and other jurisdictions across the state and across the country are using some type of a virtual platform. And in Colorado, it happens to be WebEx. We do understand that there are certain limitations presented by its use, and we acknowledge that and try to accommodate as best we can for those limitations. On the other side, we have also heard from individuals that certain individuals are able to participate more fully because they don't have the transportation issues that taking 2 buses from Longmont would present, or that parking on a busy day at the Justice Center would present, or traffic on Highway 36, or having childcare issues. Additionally, it's less expensive for their attorneys to participate because they don't have to pay attorney fees for that commute. There are some litigants who find that they are on a more level playing field with judges and attorneys, and they are feeling more comfortable about being able to engage in a medium that they find more user-friendly than entering into a physical courtroom where the judge is sitting up on the dais physically. And for younger participants in the legal arena, it may be that this is also something that remains in use even when social distancing is no longer a reason for its continued use. So I think all of us are well advised to ensure that we become adept and continue to work around any difficulties that we encounter. And with that, Kyle, are there any questions in the chat?
All right, so far we have 2. So again, anyone who would like to ask a question, please utilize the chat function. If you are having issues with that, at the end we'll give you a couple minutes just to unmute yourselves. But for now, questions are coming in. So I'll ask the first one. It's for Judge Martin specifically. The questions are, should attorneys share an exhibit prior to the hearing or only when they're ready to introduce the exhibit as evidence? And Judge Martin, I will ask you to unmute. Sorry. There you are.
So first you're going to, just to be clear, you're going to e-file the exhibits well before the hearing. If you mean share content, part of share the exhibit, if that's what you mean, which I think it is, then no, you will do that just as if you were in a real courtroom when you are presenting an exhibit to a witness or to the fact finder. It would be at that time that you would share the exhibit, select that share content, and go through the steps that I spoke about. Just that's the steps as if you were handing an exhibit to a witness or a fact finder.
Excellent, thank you. The next question could be for anyone. The question is, some districts are utilizing hand signaling to raise objections. How is the 20th JD handling these issues?
I'm sure that would be noted, and in addition to, I've heard of some individuals who have also proposed standing. We know that some people are already standing. We can't necessarily tell, but that certainly would be taken. The court would note that, and then we could proceed into an oral record of the objection.
Okay. The next question is, any words of advice on how to use demonstrative exhibits? Demonstrative exhibits, sorry, English major.
I think it's demonstrative. I would treat them the same way as far as technology goes. You would do the same things that I've discussed. You'd plan ahead. You'd share it with the other side. You'd stipulate to avoid any wasted time during the hearing itself. And then when it was time to use the demonstrative, you would share the content. That demonstrative would then be visible to everyone in the courtroom, including the virtual courtroom, including the witnesses. And you could walk your witness through the demonstrative, or you could walk through the demonstrative if you were using it in a closing or an opening. And you can actually point and do things like you've seen even happen today, circle and point and highlight certain things on a demonstrative. All of those things are available to you, and I encourage you to play around it and get comfortable with them.
All right, the next question is, if the court is muting/unmuting us, what's the best practice for objecting during a hearing?
And this goes to the raising your hand or bringing your objection to the court's attention.
Excellent. The next question is, how are you handling exclusion of witnesses prior to their testimony?
That's a great question. WebEx has a lobby, which you can visualize that as the hallway outside of our courtroom. Most judges are not using the lobby except for that very purpose, that sequestration of witnesses. At least that's my understanding. So if a witness needs to be sequestered for any reason, that participant will be placed in the virtual lobby while they're outside of the virtual courtroom, and brought back in from the lobby when it's their turn to testify or they can hear the testimony. Lobby's the answer.
Apologies, mute issue. All right, next question. How are objections handled when speaking over someone or a quick objection is needed? So you may have just covered. Let's see. Next is, are there any tips about entering video exhibits?
We still need to have a copy of that video in the clerk of court's office in order to ensure that we have a complete record for any appeal purposes. And so if the video is played during the course of the conference or the hearing, it would be shared just as Judge Martin showed the other exhibit. And then either a thumb drive or whatever manner that media has been preserved in would be filed with the clerk of court.
The next question is probably for me. Will a recording of this presentation be available to us? Yes, we will put this on our YouTube channel and put it on our website so that you guys are able to download that and view it at your leisure in the future. The next question is, if the client comes to the office and their attorney and client are together, how do we proceed with the testimony?
I'm not really sure exactly what this question is asking. I've heard of a lot of different creative ways from judges around the state to ensure the integrity of the witness who's testifying is not actively engaging in any other kind of communication, including making sure that their hands are seen or they're holding something, things pretty extreme. Really, I think, as you can see, as long as the witness is appearing on video, it should be fairly apparent whether or not they are interacting with anyone or reading things or have access to documents, etc.
And do keep in mind that the purpose of this is to ensure everyone's safety. And I know that I've previously discussed with some that while we can't dictate how clients choose to engage with their clients, the intent is that there would continue to be social distancing. And so the idea would be that your clients would remain safe and that you would remain safe, that there wouldn't be any unnecessary exposure, or you're not going to remain masked during the course of your engagement in a virtual hearing. So if you're not remaining masked, then I don't know whether you'd be in a facility or a conference where you could be 6 feet apart and still both be on the same device. I don't know.
And I would just follow up. I know there's been a couple of hearings where attorneys and their clients were in the same room on separate devices. And again, that creates a situation that is unworkable with the technology because you get the echo loop going. So again, just to kind of reiterate, whatever you're going to do with your client, make sure you practice ahead of time so you know that things are going to work the way you anticipate.
Excellent. I will keep going. I know we're coming up on the 1:15 mark, and we have, over 15 messages coming in as questions for you guys. So let me know if I need to stop, and maybe I can make these, send these messages to you, and you can try to respond, and I can get those to the attendees. But should I keep going with questions? Okay. The next one is, are there any special requirements for the virtual appearance of defendants on bond? Does having a surety make a difference?
There's no different requirements for somebody who is on bond, and the surety doesn't make a difference. If somebody shows up audio or visually for their appearance, that's an appearance.
Gotcha. Next question. I need to have an interpreter with me when I'm with my client during a hearing. Is that an acceptable arrangement? Are there other rules about the presence of that interpreter?
I don't understand if you're talking about a separate interpreter from the court interpreter. If that's what you think you need, you don't. The state will provide an interpreter for any case that requires an interpreter, unless you're talking about a different type of case where you need your own interpreter. Somebody have to clarify that.
Okay. She can come
Maybe
in
it would be helpful to explain that the court interpreter is also going to be participating by WebEx.
Correct. The court interpreter will be via WebEx, and everybody will be hearing these simultaneous interpretations.
And if the questioner wants to send in a clarification, that would be fine. The next question is, if an exhibit is a book of photographs, are those exhibits still e-filed?
Yes.
That was an easy one. Okay. Next question, would it be helpful / acceptable for the court to have a hard copy of exhibits delivered to the court for the hearing?
Yes, particularly in civil cases where we have sometimes volumes of exhibits. The judges are going to want hard copies.
And that would not be my preference, so you may want to check with the court.
All right, the next question was, I think you answered this with the photographs. Are video / audio exhibits shared the same way using the share content feature? Should these exhibits be e-filed as well?
Yes.
I think that's a yes. Okay. Is WebEx going to be used for jury trials? Latest info regarding when jury trials will begin? No.
Okay. No, WebEx will not be used for jury trials. I can imagine a scenario where a defendant waives every right that he can think of and allows that to happen, but I don't see that realistically happening. So I don't expect any jury trials to occur via WebEx right now. I know they're happening in other states. I don't see it in our future. Next, the latest guidance we have is that there are no jury trials through the end of this month, June. That is firm. I will tell you, it is certainly very possible that is going to be extended through the month of July. There's no official word on that, and as soon as there is an official word, we'll let everybody know. But right now, June is the current end date, with a likely extension beyond that in the near future.
Okay. Sorry. Next question. Each time someone enters the virtual courtroom during a hearing, will the court inquire if that person is a sequestered witness?
As in the physical courtroom, when somebody enters the physical courtroom, lawyers tend to look back and they either recognize them or not. So if there is some sense that the person may be a witness in the proceeding who's sequestered, there is an opportunity for that inquiry to be made. And just to review the piece about the judge as the host muting everyone, that does not mean that you are not able to unmute yourselves. So you also retain the control, the ability to unmute yourself. And so you may do so and say, may I interject a question? That person who just came in is a sequestered witness. And that also goes, there's a pending question on the objection. You may raise a hand, but if it is faster or you can't find your unmute button, you may also, if you can't find your unmute button faster, you may also do so and make the objection orally.
Gotcha. Next question. Will we know when our expert exhibits have joined? Can the lay witness be interrupted for the expert's testimony to reduce the amount of time the expert spends in court?
I don't know what it means when our expert exhibits have joined.
I think they mean the expert witness, but it
Probably.
doesn't make sense to me either.
So what I will tell you is WebEx, one of the buttons on the bottom is participant list, and that you can pop that up to see who all the participants, basically tells you who's in the courtroom at that moment. So in most hearings, we're going to know when somebody comes in and out, but just like in any other real, live courtroom proceeding, you're going to have be in communication with your witness. You say, hey, I don't need you here until the afternoon. You're going to step out and check. You're going to want a back way to communicate with your witnesses. So you can say, hey, it's time for you to enter in the courtroom. And that's going to be the easiest way to ensure it, is just having those back channels, just like you would if you were, in a live courtroom.
All right, I believe we're down to our last question, which is on issue of client with attorney. Some clients don't have good internet. So would we need to have them go to another location, just such as the BCBA?
If you want them to appear by video, obviously, they're going to need to have sufficient ability to connect. So yes, if they don't have the capabilities to connect at home and you want them to appear by video, they're going to have to go someplace where they can connect. But they can always just simply call in and appear by audio only.
Excellent. I believe you guys covered everything. So the last comment there was thank you, judges. So I'll echo that. Thank you all for participating. If anyone doesn't have any further questions, feel free to send them to me and I'll do my best to get them answered. This recording will be made available on the BCBA YouTube channel, which we'll link to on the website and probably drop a link into a Monday's eBrief. But other than that, again, presenters, thank you so much for joining us today. This was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.